Hello, brothers and sisters. Today we are looking at the topic, the 2,300 days of Daniel chapter 8, verse 14. So, if you've been following my presentations, I've often been alluding to the 2,300 days of Daniel chapter 8, verse 14. So, this is a period that is talked about Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, which says, "Unto 2,300 days, then there shall the sanctuary be cleansed." So for this presentation, we're going to explain how these 2,300 days are actually divided in terms of the periods of time that are covered and who the people concerned are. So let us delve into the lesson. Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. That is Daniel chapter 8, verse 14, like I've already alluded to. Shall we proceed? Let's look at the day to year principle. In prophecy, a day stands for a year. At Numbers chapter 14, verse 34, the Bible says, "Even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise." So the verse is very clear. Here, the Bible is just emphasizing the principle that a day in prophecy stands for a year. So every time we come across days in prophecy, we are actually referring to a year in literal terms. Okay? Then, shall we also read Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 6? This one says, "And thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year." I think this can be more clearer. It can be more clear than this. We all know that a day in prophecy actually stands for a year. So this has been established and there's nothing to argue about. It's very clear. We shall proceed. The chapter and verse of Daniel chapter 8, verse 14 was actually the central pillar and the foundation of the Advent faith. So if anything, the Advent faith was based on this verse. So whatever they were preaching about was anchored on Daniel chapter 8, verse 14. So to them, the period had actually been fulfilled when the Messiah was supposed to come and take his people back home. It was about time that the world came to an end. And they set out to preach that actually the days have been fulfilled and the people have to get ready for the coming of the Lord. I'm sure we all know, or most of us know, that it was actually William Miller who preached a lot on this verse to warn the people of the imminent coming of the Lord. Now, when did the 2,300 days begin? These days actually began with a command of Artaxerxes for the restoration and rebuilding of Jerusalem. Okay, that was in ancient Middle Persia. So Artaxerxes issued a decree where he told the captives who were taken from Judah to go and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem that was destroyed by the king of Babylon, that is Nebuchadnezzar. So from the time of the decree in 457 BC, that is where the 2,300 days began. So when the decree went into effect, then we were supposed to start counting down up to the time when the 2,300 days were going to end. So that was the beginning of the 2,300 days. Now, how were the 2,300 days divided? The 490 years were actually allotted to the Jews. Now, these 490 years specifically had to do or have to do with the Jews. And they were extended to the beginning of the Messiah's ministry in 27 AD. Daniel chapter 9 verse 25 says, "From the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks." So if we are to convert these blocks of time, that is 7 weeks, 62 weeks, it actually comes to 69 weeks. And 69 weeks actually translate to 483 days. And since we are dealing with prophecy, that is actually 483 years. Okay, so from 457 BC to 27 AD, it took about 483 years or 69 weeks. This is what we are being told here. So in 27 AD, that is when the ministry or the Messiah's ministry actually began. In this year, the Messiah, or rather Jesus, was baptized, or rather anointed, and his ministry began. I hope we are together. The Messiah cut off, or the Messiah killed. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. So if you look at the blocks of time, we've been given 3 from the previous panel. As you can see, we've got 7 weeks, then 62 weeks. Okay. 7 weeks, then we've got 60, and then we've got 2 weeks. That is what we've been given, which, like I mentioned, translates to 69 weeks. Okay. Then, with that in mind, we know that what we've been given here, which says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." Okay, this 1 week that is being referred to is the one which comes after 62 weeks. So we've been told that after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off. Okay, so this actually is the last period in those 3 blocks that have been given. Okay, which is actually 62 weeks. Okay, so the last block. But if you have to add all of them, it actually comes to 69 weeks. So the last block of time, which marks the end of the 69th week. Okay, that is what is being talked about here. And we are told, "And they shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." So there's 1 week remaining from the 490. Okay, since we've got 483 days or years, we still have the 7 years remaining, which is actually 1 week. And then we're being told that, "And in the midst of the week," that is after 3.5 years, He shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. How was that going to be accomplished? This simply refers to the death of the Messiah. We know that his ministry went for 3.5 years. Okay? But actually, the years that were given were actually 7. So within 3.5 years, he was crucified. That much we know. I'm sure we know what happened. Then there remained the other 3.5 years. So all this is coming from Daniel chapter 9, verse 26 to 27. I hope that part is clear. Now, when did the 490 years terminate? These years were to terminate at the beginning of the ministry to the Gentiles. Now, if you calculate from 27 plus 7 years, that brings us to 34 AD. But we know that in 31 AD, that is 3.5 years later, that is after 27 AD, okay? That was when the Messiah was killed, was crucified, actually, and he died on the cross, and then he was buried, and then he resurrected, okay? In 31 AD. Then 3.5 years later, from that time, that is the period which was given for the ministry of the Messiah through his disciples to reach out to the Jews. So they were actually given 7 years. Okay? And then after those years were accomplished, that is when Paul mentioned that they were actually turning to the Gentiles. And Paul was sent as the first missionary to the Gentiles. And that happened at the stoning of Stephen, or just after the stoning of Stephen. Okay? So the stoning of Stephen and the conversion of Saul, who later became known as Paul. Okay? So this marked the beginning of the ministry to the Gentiles in 34 AD. And that is when the period that was allotted to the Jews came to an end. Now, when we subtract the 490 years from the 2,300 years, we are going to remain with 1,810 days or years in prophecy. Okay? So we remain with 1810 years. And then when we add the 1810 years to 34 AD, that brings us to 1844. Okay? And it was in this year, 1844, when the sanctuary was actually supposed to be cleansed, because that is the year to which the 2,300 days extended to. Okay? So the angel said, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. That is unto 2,300 years, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So from 457 BC, the 2,300 years or days extended to 1844. And the Adventists then were expecting the coming of the Messiah. But we know that the Messiah did not come to the earth, but he went to the temple. Okay? So this is how the 2,300 days came to be. Or this is how far they reached. But instead, the event that was fulfilled in 1844 was actually in Malachi, when the Messiah was supposed to fulfill or to visit his temple. I'm sure I covered this in the other presentations. If you can follow, I'll see what I can do so that at least we can have a look, or we can watch that presentation to understand when this prophecy was actually fulfilled. Thank you for the time you've taken to listen to this presentation. I hope you've got something from this presentation that will help you understand how the 2,300 days were accomplished. Goodbye and good day.